What should we really be watching when Altuve taunts Ohtani? What Shohei Ohtani noticed wasn't spectacular defense or clutch hitting from the Astros. It was something deeper. Something that brought back memories no team in baseball once revisited. When a man who has dedicated his entire existence to preparation, discipline, and mastery of the game quietly begins to suspect that the game itself wasn't clean, that is the moment worth understanding. José Altuve didn't need to say a word. After the Houston Astros defeated the Los Angeles Dodgers in a game that left the baseball world stunned, Altuve's celebration wasn't just the natural joy of a winning athlete. It was pointed. It was directed. And anyone paying attention knew exactly who it was aimed at. Shohei Ohtani stood in the visiting dugout area, watching. And according to sources close to the Dodgers organization, what Ohtani felt in that moment wasn't anger in the traditional sense. It was something colder. More calculated. A question forming in the back of his mind that, once it arrived, refused to leave. Had this happened before? The taunting itself became secondary within hours. Sports media locked onto the gesture, the expression, the theater of it all. But the real story was already moving underground, building quietly in conversations between Dodgers players, coaches, and in the mind of the man who anchors everything that franchise does. Ohtani, by nature, does not react publicly to provocation. Those who know him understand that his silence is never passive. It is deliberate. It is the same silence he uses before a pitch, before a swing, before any moment that requires absolute clarity. When he went quiet after the Altuve taunt, people who understand Ohtani knew he wasn't brushing it off. He was processing it. To understand why Ohtani's suspicion carries weight, you must first understand what he sees during a baseball game that most players simply cannot. Because Ohtani operates on both sides of the ball, as a pitcher reading hitters and as a hitter reading pitchers, his processing of the game happens at two layers simultaneously. He notices pitch sequence logic. He notices catcher tendencies. He notices the timing of a batter's reaction before a pitch arrives. These are things that take most players years to develop even one side of. Ohtani lives in both simultaneously. And during the game against Houston, something in those patterns didn't feel right to him. Sources familiar with the Dodgers' internal conversations indicate that Ohtani raised questions, not accusations, but questions, about the consistency of Houston's swing decisions. Particularly against pitches that, by all statistical logic, should have produced more uncertainty. Pitches that were designed to exploit specific weaknesses. Pitches that, on paper, the Astros hitters should not have been sitting on with such confidence. They were sitting on them anyway. Now, this alone proves nothing. Elite hitters read pitchers well. Veteran lineups develop rhythm against particular styles. There are legitimate explanations. But Ohtani, who approaches baseball the way a scientist approaches a problem, found himself unable to dismiss the pattern using any of those legitimate explanations. And the Astros, of all organizations in baseball, carry a history that makes such questions impossible to brush aside cleanly. In 2017, the Houston Astros won the World Series. 3 years later, Major League Baseball confirmed what many had suspected: they had been stealing signs electronically throughout that run. The scandal reshaped conversations about competitive integrity in professional sports. Punishments were issued. Apologies were made. And yet, for many players around the league, the damage to trust ran deeper than any fine or suspended manager could address. The Astros rebuilt. They retooled their roster, their culture, their public image. Many of the players directly involved in the scheme are gone. Altuve himself has maintained that he personally did not use a buzzer device to receive stolen signs, a claim that remains contested in various circles but has never been formally disproven at the level of official discipline. But the shadow exists. It follows the franchise into every conversation where their success seems to defy conventional explanation. It rises whenever a visiting pitcher walks away from Minute Maid Park feeling like something was fundamentally off. Ohtani is not the first elite pitcher to feel this. He is simply the highest profile one to feel it in a context that comes loaded with additional theater, namely, an opposing player taunting him after the game. That taunt from Altuve did something unintentional. It took a private doubt forming in Ohtani's mind and gave it a face. It gave it a moment. It made it impossible to keep the feeling entirely internal. Here is the element of this situation that cuts most deeply for someone like Ohtani. He prepares for everything. His pre-game process involves studying opposing hitters at a level that borders on obsessive. He reviews pitch sequence data, swing tendencies, plate coverage maps, and launch angle histories. His bullpen sessions aren't simple warm-ups, they are simulations of specific at-bat scenarios he has already mapped in his mind before he ever walks to the mound. This is not unusual for elite pitchers. What is unusual is the scale at which Ohtani does it, and the integration of his dual role. As a hitter himself, he understands the mental architecture of a batter in ways most pitchers never fully access. He knows what information a hitter needs to sit on a pitch with confidence. He knows the difference between a batter who is guessing and a batter who knows. The difference, to Ohtani's trained eye, was visible against Houston. This is the cruelest dimension of sign-stealing suspicion for any starting pitcher. You can prepare perfectly, execute your plan at a high level, and still feel powerless if your plan has been compromised before you ever threw the first pitch. All the preparation in the world becomes meaningless if the opponent already knows what you're delivering. For a man whose entire professional identity is built on preparation and mastery, that possibility is not just professionally troubling. It is existentially troubling. Let's return to the taunt itself, because it deserves a closer reading than it has received. Altuve is a veteran. He has played in massive games, under enormous pressure, in front of hostile crowds. He understands optics. He understands that celebrating in the direction of Ohtani, a player of Ohtani's stature, in a game this visible, would generate exactly the kind of attention it generated. Whether the taunt was calculated or spontaneous, its effect was to position the Astros' victory as a personal statement. Not just a team win. A message. The question worth asking is, what gives a player the confidence to taunt the best player in baseball directly after beating him? There are two possible answers. The first is that Altuve simply felt the joy of competition and let it spill out visibly. Athletes do this. Emotion is real. The second is that there was an underlying certainty in how the game unfolded, a certainty that goes beyond normal confidence and into something that feels more like assurance. Ohtani, based on what those close to him have described, is sitting with the uncomfortable space between those two possibilities. He is not declaring publicly that Houston cheated. He is doing something more characteristically Ohtani. He is watching, analyzing, and filing what he observed into a mental archive that he will not discuss until he has something close to certainty. Major League Baseball is now in a structurally awkward position. The sign-stealing scandal of 2017 to 2019 produced a framework for investigation and punishment. But it also revealed the limits of what the league could detect, prosecute, and prove. Electronic communication during games has become harder to police as technology becomes more sophisticated and less visible. Any new investigation, if one were formally triggered, would face the same fundamental evidentiary challenge that complicated the original case. You need someone on the inside willing to describe what they witnessed. You need documentation. You need something beyond the feeling of a pitcher who noticed that hitters seemed to know too much. Ohtani's suspicion, even as the suspicion of arguably the most complete baseball player alive, does not constitute evidence. It constitutes a signal. And signals, without corroborating documentation or testimony, are difficult to act upon officially. What the league can do, and what sources suggest it is quietly doing, is monitor the situation. Enhanced security protocols around signal communication. Observers watching dugout communication patterns more carefully. The infrastructure of quiet vigilance, even in the absence of a formal probe. The Dodgers organization, for their part, is being careful not to make any public statements that could be interpreted as formal accusations. This is as much legal strategy as it is media management. Accusations without proof damage organizations that make them, not just organizations accused. Those who have observed Ohtani across his career in both Japan and the United States consistently describe the same quality: he does not let external uncertainty compromise internal discipline. If he believes something was wrong with that game, he will adjust. He will study more. He will find alternative approaches to sequencing that are harder to predict even with advanced knowledge of tendencies. He will discuss with his battery partner what layers of counter-preparation are available. This is how Ohtani operates. He does not get louder. He gets more precise. There is also a competitive dimension to this that runs beneath the surface conversation. Ohtani, at this stage of his career with the Dodgers, is chasing something beyond individual achievement. He has the hardware. He has the records. What he does not yet have is a World Series ring as a Dodger, in a city and organization that has poured generational commitment into building around him. The possibility that a team stands between him and that goal through means that aren't entirely legitimate, that possibility carries weight that goes beyond a single regular season game. The taunt from Altuve, whatever its intent, landed on a man who is now fully aware that Houston sees this as a rivalry worth engaging at the emotional level. Ohtani's response, characteristically, will not come through words or gestures. It will come through performance. What should we really be watching in all of this? Not the taunt itself. Not even the formal outcome of whatever quiet inquiries are now happening behind closed doors. Watch Ohtani the next time he faces Houston. Watch the sequencing. Watch the intensity of his pre-game preparation routines leading into that matchup. Watch whether the Dodgers employ any unusual communication protocols that signal an adaptation to a perceived threat. And watch whether Altuve celebrates the same way the next time they meet, or whether something in the dynamic has shifted. Because in baseball, as in most things, the truth doesn't always arrive through official channels. Sometimes it arrives through the changed behavior of the people who know exactly what happened. Shohei Ohtani knows what he saw. The question is what he does with it.